afternoon, everyone. I'm Keith Hull, the original founder of Stone Culture. Today we're going to talk a little bit about notching some arrowheads. Before we do, let's talk a little bit about safety. Again, I've got my whole arms covered because I don't want to get any obsidian chips that are bouncing off my skin and cutting me. I've got my leather gloves on, safety glasses, and I wear the hat because it makes me good looking. Alright, let's take a look at some tools. Okay. As I mentioned, safety equipment is important. However, I've taken my gloves off for this portion of the video. First, we're going to talk about our flaker. This is a pressure flaker that I got from flintnappertools.com. It's a copper rod with 2 set screws set in neoprene. You can always turn the set screws and extend the copper outward. However, some people grind their copper tip down with a file or a grinder to get a sharp point again. That's really not necessary. The best thing that you could do is to have an anvil and strike it with a hammer to flatten it out again, and one flaker will last you a lifetime. This is my notching tool. I got this again from flintnappingtools.com. It's a neoprene handle with 2 set screws, and this is a 12-penny nail that's been filed down to give it a nice thin edge, and that will be my flaker. Now here is another notching tool that I have, again with neoprene and set screws, but this one's a smaller diameter. It's actually very important that the handle fits the palm of your hand really well. If it doesn't fit right, and if it's too short in your hand, then it really affects your flake runs. This is another tool that I made myself. This is just a carbide tip for a Dremel that I broke off, so I turned it into a notching tool. This also works really good when you have a preform that's got a little flake that didn't quite come off. You can use it like a dental pick and pull those flakes off very easily. You can see here in the video. Very good tool to have. Okay, let's talk for a second about different stylings of notching. This arrowhead was made for me by Robert Townsend. It's Burns Green Obsidian. This point was made by Gerald Woodson, and it's fluted with a very long flute all the way down the end. Again, this is a piece of Carrara glass that was made for me by Larry Woodcock, and a good friend of mine. This is a Ray Hill point. This point was made by Kenny Hull. It's a nice Cahokia style point. This is one that I found that actually has the tip broken off, but is otherwise absolutely complete. This style point right here is made by Doug Rich, good friend of mine, student learning to nap. This is kind of a fox-eared point. And this is the preform that we will be working with. I already napped out the basic shape. This is a really nice piece of triple flow with a little bit of gold sheen in it. I don't know if that shows up very well, but we're going to nap out the notching on this and see if we can't fit it to a shaft as well. Okay, it looks like my camera just totally flaked out on me for a second and deleted everything that I just videotaped, so we're going to start again. Now, as I mentioned before, one thing that's really important is your safety equipment. So I have a leather pad here that I put over my leg just to protect me and make sure I get my leather gloves on. The leather pads you can get at flintnappers.com, or I sell them myself. The gloves, I really recommend going to Harbor Freight Tools. They're like $1.50 and they work great. Now, one thing that I did in the video before my computer just totally flaked out on me there, my camera, is I took my copper napper and I just thinned this edge down to get a good napping platform. The thinner your blade is, the easier it's going to be to notch. If you have a very thick blade, what happens is as you're notching back into the blade, it just gets thicker and thicker as it reaches the middle. You can see that they're kind of humped this way. So what you want to do is thin out this edge as much as possible. The thinner your blade is, the easier it is to nap your notches. Now again, my computer or my camera kind of flaked out on me here, so what I've done is I've already notched 2 places And what you do is you want to make sure that you're lined up here well with your other notch, and you just take off your first flake, flip it over, take off another flake, flip it back over again, and just continue on here flaking a little bit each time. And you see my flaking tool is wide on this side and narrow this way, and what that does is it enables me to change the width of my flakes. I can take it like this and remove a lot of material. I can turn it this way and just clean up the edges a little bit. The flaking tool is very important that you keep it shaped. Now with this 12 penny nail notching tool, I just use a file to sharpen that and keep that in good shape. I don't hammer it like I do with the copper rods. And what you're trying to do is put a little bit of inward pressure before you push down. That way you're taking some material back this way off of the arrowhead, and that makes it a little bit easier to notch. Now the more further I carry my notches, the easier it's going to be for me to break my arrowhead. So I want to just go nice and slow, take my time, and put together my notches the way that I want them to be. I don't want to hurry and try to take too much at once. I don't want to put too much pressure on to take too big of a bite, because that's just going to trash my arrowhead. Now you can see here, hopefully in the video, that I've got 3 good notches on there to set it into my arrow shaft and be able to tie across it. This distance is still pretty wide, so it's going to be a little bit loose when I wrap it around my arrowhead. However, the wider this is base, the stronger my arrow is going to be. If I narrow it to a very thin point, just so it fits well inside my shaft, then the likelihood of the point breaking if the arrow misses its target is pretty high. So oftentimes a Stone Age man would make his arrowheads a little bit more thick and crude, because he didn't want to have to sit around all day napping arrowheads. He wanted to be able to reuse them if he shot and missed his target. A lot of people would argue that point and say that the crudest arrowheads are the oldest ones, but I think it's all a matter of necessity. If you're out looking for berries and you see a herd of deer or elk or buffalo, and you think, wow, I really need a new buffalo skin or some meat for my lodge, I might just sit down right there on the spot, nap out a couple of quick crude arrowheads, do whatever you could for some fletching, and even just use an addle to go and bring home some meat. So I don't necessarily think that the crudest arrowheads are the oldest arrowheads. But I think the opposite is true, that the more finer the flake lines, the more modern the point is, just because technique and technology passed on from generation to generation works. So here's our notching on our arrowhead. Again, just to review very quickly, I use my notching tool. I take a flake, flip it over, take a flake, flip it back, take a flake, flip it over, take a flake, and then I turn it the thin way to shape my notching, and just file down the edges a little bit, basically to give it a nice shape. And there's your finished product. An authentic peaceful arrowhead. I sell on eBay, Facebook under Stone Culture at live.com, Etsy under Stone Culture. My eBay name is www.stoneculture.net. There are no dots in there. And I can also be reached by email, stoneculture@live.com. Always happy to help out any way I can. If you have any questions or would like to see some videos on some other things, let me know and I'll see what I can do for you. Thanks and good napping to you.